cables.
Yeah, so are you like an insomniac intern? Do you do that? Or
Not with Insomnia, so I work with the production thing. So they take the spec sheets and then coordinate with like Lightning Audio, Mountain Rentals, like building the stages and stuff. But because Lost Lands is a lot more DJs, I actually had a full day off on Lost Lands. I think it was Friday or Saturday. I had the full day off and got to see like an entire day's worth of stuff. Electric Forest. Do you know why stages are so high? Well, because under the stage, there's a bunch of stage goblins sitting in hammocks. We wake up when the music goes off. They go down with a little flashlight. It's like time to do a stage, you know? They had those like big sets. Do you remember the one at EF that had like the big giant beak and like the flamingos?
Love Ben Babe. I have an in-person.
So we had some pretty big set transitions that took like 20, 25 minutes.
You know what?
what stage is that?
I don't remember the name of it. I remember the dirtiest one was Carousel. That big, like the big half circle.
Yeah, he was like, that's what I
So it's so dusty, and there's like all this like the whole thing. So when we were on loadout, that was the dirtiest day ever. So that half circle hut for Carousel Lounge, I was so dirty. You couldn't see the tattoos on my leg.
You know, I believe it because Carousel had like the most like wookish like, artists on that stage.
Yeah. So we talked about. So do you remember the pit that had like the deathcore stage at Electric Forest, and it had a pit? It was literally like 8 yards of black beans. Like all that crunchy stuff, the little gravel. It was actually beans. It was black beans. Like 8, like an entire dump truck full of them. And so you're like Kobe Luwak is like this like coffee that's like fermented.
late lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Excrement.
Okay, yeah.
So we decided, so we're just yapping after work, and we're like, we're gonna make Wookiee Luwak.
So it's like,
And we're just gonna make a drink out of it and just
Got a good time.
Send it out.
at your own risk.
It's a process.
Hit like
It's a
needle-
process, and I'm like,
needle
Just
gun.
feel all the sweat and the,
It's
yeah,
you're in.
have a whole life
Yeah.
somewhere.
Then you
What
make me
inspired you
realize
to
that I
take
didn't
it? I feel like that's kind of
see
a,
as
it's not a
much
niche
of Electric
class.
Forest
It's
as I
kind of
thought.
yeah,
I won't lie.
it's not something you
I was with the group that was way off.
Yeah.
So it's just like
Everyone I told
I spent most of the time
backhand.
with a sea
I think it's a
wrench
great way to get,
attached
like-
to me or
Yeah,
sitting
you,
in a
you never
hammock
know
under the
if
stage.
like you hired a
But the group is so fun,
marketing person.
you know, like you,
Like,
you have to really trust the people you're working with when you're on like equipment. There's cranes overhead.
Oh, yeah.
Got you.
It really kind of teaches you like the interface
Maybe you're
because
in a
like
free paid
artists have these
$1,000
dreams, like
raise.
I want
Exactly.
this
Bonus.
experience, you know,
It
I
could
want
be a
the
big raise
attendees
for
to
me.
see this, and there
I
has to
took-
be
I took
people
usually
that know how to like create that, you know, because they're on their
And the
music,
best
they
part is
have like
they
their
leave you in the class,
drawings or however like
for
they
the rest of your time.
but
so
you have to
still
have
access
like
all the resources.
engineers and
Yeah,
people
in that
that
class.
know how to coordinate on the
Just go
technical
look back
side
and
to
you're
like
like,
make
all
that
your
happen.
courses and stuff.
Yeah, especially because you're under
It's
the,
funny, it's still published, so it's all my
the
courses
string cheese
that I'm in now plus that
you
one.
under that stage.
It's really
Yes,
it's like
I
a
set
software.
up the drums
Let's
for
go.
String Cheese Incident.
Really?
That was fine.
Yes.
No,
It
no,
just, it just
no.
is a published class, so.
So
like,
how was
yeah.
that hard? Cause
It's
like,
not hard.
I could imagine.
It's whatever. It can
Because I
take
have the
different
whole list of
event
class
every
of
set.
like what's called
Like,
from like last
one event is
semester.
on like beach
Okay.
balls, the other event
Just too
is doing,
distracting.
I don't know, like sparklers or something.
It's all in the
Mine,
spec sheet.
mine,
Is it?
registered
Yeah,
themselves.
so we have
It really depends on the professor if they
a site coordinator
I never did
that
that.
for each stage.
That's
There's
just
a
only
site
one.
coordinator, you know, they have the spec sheet to make sure everything goes on
One,
time.
a few.
Um,
One had a class that was entirely on
I
Discord.
don't know if I can mention the name here, but there was one set that was late because their tour manager was
Is it
shoving
under
stuff
communication?
off of
Design.
an
Copa.
18-wheeler
Calls fine arts.
in the rain.
But I'm a UX designer, so I'm in tech.
Who was like,
I'm a teacher.
Well, so the truck docks up and it's in sand and it's
Nice.
raining,
You know
so
what
it's
it is?
drifting and the
I had a friend
18-wheeler
coming
is
in who was
crooked.
an MIS
And there's a loading dock behind the stage. It's this like huge area,
Too
like
many
the
of us.
size of this room to
Too
organize
big.
all those crates.
Mhm.
And the guy is like so rushed, he is
I feel like
throwing
my TXI class
boxes
is pretty-
that literally say top heavy, like two stacked
Oh, sorry.
cases that aren't
Yeah,
properly
TXI
strapped.
is what this is.
And so like, so there's a ramp, there's this big
IT.
metal diamond pick ramp
They're
that you
integrated,
put between
integrated
the
design
dock
courses.
and the truck.
But
And then then you
There was-
strap
there's
it
one
down
person
with
that we're
big
not
straps to
invited.
make sure it's not
Okay.
going anywhere.
And
These
so
boxes
they
weigh
offered
400
me-
pounds or more.
Yeah, of course.
If
And he
you
was
enjoy the
rolling them
design
off of
process
it without the
wow,
ramp
creative
strap.
iteration
And
you hate creating
there was a
outward.
double stack
Do it.
case that
I
didn't
mean, I
have
don't
a
hate
band
it, but
over
it's just
them.
like, it takes
And
so much time.
I was on the ramp
it's like,
that goes
I
up
don't
to
really have time or
the
energy to do
staging
this,
area. So
but
you have
like,
the
I
back
like
dock,
why I
the
do
staging
it.
area, and
I
then
just
on
have to
stage.
study it.
So
You
in
should
the
have
hole,
time to do that.
on deck.
It is, and that's, I feel
Like
like
so.
This guy just like,
And so the stage
Well, I thought
manager
that was
for
on the
this band
easier
was like
end
throwing
of
things off of it.
intensity.
And I saw that top box that had red, I
but
couldn't
it's
read it
more
for
like
but it just had red tape on it, and I knew it was something heavy,
trying
like,
to figure out like,
uh,
everything.
Soka. So a Soka cable is about this big, and it has like 100 different wires in it for who knows what. And the way he was throwing it and that ramp was wobbly, those boxes were gonna come unstacked. And the person that was fielding them from the truck to stage them for us to push them up the ramp was like 5 foot. And I'm in the rain,
I thought it was a double.
and
It is a double.
I just saw the whole thing in my head, so I jumped from my spot and I shoulder checked the box to keep it from like rolling off.
you almost got disability for your whole life.
It hurt. No, we don't have OSHA. We have OSHA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The layout was really not very
But we
attractive.
trade stickers to put on our hard hats for good luck and stuff.
That's all the OSHA is for you guys.
So after that, there were like 40 of us that marched across the main stage at Electric Forest to Autumn, our site coordinator, and we're like, this is what happened.
I have
This
like,
is
I have
really
like
quick,
sisters
it's
too.
a huge danger. We're not touching anything
I have a
until that ramp is stripped down.
Everything happened on a Thursday.
No, 'cause I mean, like, he's like,
Design.
this is a big specific.
I'm dead.
And nothing against the artist, which is why I don't want to say the name. But she was like, oh yeah, like hell yeah. And so then you see those same 40 people marching back with someone with a clipboard.
Which means you're official.
Yeah.
You got some shit.
And then after that, he was really nice. And so there was one set in Electric Forest on the main stage that was kind of late. So we may or may not have, I may or may not have done my first and only strike in my life, because he was throwing a full 100 pounds about to crush something. But it really,
But I know about
doing
that.
that kind of
I had a
groundwork
friend
teaches
for myself.
you like how much it takes to
Designers
create
are literally like
something.
every single one.
And it gives you a sense of feasibility, right? It's just like, so we have 2 weeks to
There's
build this, you have 30 minutes to set up,
But you know all these
I wanna find something in that, you know, it's like,
Yeah, we have code in our major.
You're amazing at comp stuff.
I mean, I
I'm
do work in
curious,
tech,
so
so.
since you were like
Oh, yeah?
on that side.
What do you do?
I'm a
on
UX designer. Yeah, UX designer.
Electric Forest gives us like feel like once you're in that forest, you're like 30 miles away from yours.
Hey, you guys
it's like very much
Just finished an
a
internship with
different
IBM.
world. And I wonder like how much effect did you have on that? Is it like
how much effect does it have on?
you're in your crew, like how do you guys like
I know they do
because I'm
sites
assuming
for
it's
today, but that's probably not relevant to you.
You
How
guys
do you do that?
yeah, like
Well, catering.
I just don't like the cinnamon.
Every meal is
But I had
catered
a
for us when we're at those big festivals in the middle of nowhere, and it was beautiful. So you have this big mess hall, and every day they had a different bouquet of giant flowers above you, and no one went hungry. It didn't matter if you're like you're vegan or any dietary restrictions. You
And you
just go
got it?
get
Wait, you rolled
whatever
it.
you
How
want,
did you
eat as
get
much
it?
as you want. There's
Because I
ice
interned
cold
for
drinks. We
IBM.
had a 500-gallon
But I don't know honestly how I got to
tub
that
of
one.
ice with like cold water.
They did.
You know, so it helps
Yeah.
sustain us. And there's just like a really good
And then I
culture of
last one
support.
was
You know, like if you
Hey,
need
you
something,
made
if
it.
something
do
isn't
it.
safe.
Yeah, I got my offer.
That would have been, I think they
That's
were bought out
good.
this
I
year,
say
right?
You're
By
coasting?
Salon.
No, yeah, I got accepted. I accepted I think like last
I'm not
week.
sure.
Oh.
Very
Slay.
specific.
The woman?
I did, so I'm on
It's that.
the call list for
Enjoy
my
your last
production
year.
crew.
Yep, and so
That would be me.
I wasn't in
I
school
would
last
say,
year, but I have
You
2
did.
You're like one of
semesters
the
left,
first
so I'm trying to like finish
I
up.
never
So
ever see this.
with this, I really
Y'all are
like,
like-
We don't really
I'm
make
gonna
it to
miss it so
society.
much, but
Y'all are,
I'm gonna have to.
y'all are, y'all are so rare.
So do you lost like?
We are not very really.
Oh, no, I know you're not.
Years.
I can literally put my name on like one hand.
Yeah, I
I've
know.
also had And so I'm on this one-wheel drive golf cart finding people like face down in the shelter.
I'm not like
So we need like transportation. And that's kind of like really where I learned that. You know, set your own schedule, but every once in a while you just go find a show or something. But it was one I got with crew one that I really loved.
But there's indoor pool, so it's like.
Lunch goes into the building.
And Ed's was like, what?
Literally a 3-year built city.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an inside pool. So
Especially
like,
like, yeah, after electric
They
course,
probably-
it's so immersive, you know, just like, yeah, it's like a whole city.
Yeah. And there's so much going on with immersive.
That was the most dramatic because I wasn't.
I think I can really find it.
I could actually be outside and enjoy the sun.
And it's getting the experience from all sides of it. Like, know what's possible.
There was like,
A lot of it is like knowing who to ask when you have a question.
Yeah, no, that's true.
What brings you here?
I know nothing about immersive, I just know like, to do something interesting. I've seen you guys like experiment for a long time and stop me, I was like, okay, I'll do it.
She's Emma. They're a good friend of mine.
A little bit, never
Also
thought,
Zach's.
oh yeah.
oh, are you also?
Every music festival I listen to that I like has like so much immersive, you know,
You're good for nicely. I have processed that.
it's a good market.
That's real.
It's so fun. It's just, it's magical.
Are you into that?
What do you do? Everyone's faces. It's so fun. And then just like, oh, no. I mean, stressful. But then when you see how much people enjoy it, it's really worth it. You ever go to the fairy hutches? Like they'll leave something.
Oh, I think the gift tree, the very nice.
I thought they were gonna start already, but.
That's why I was
One thing I did
Just
do,
getting a minor as getting hospital.
I never got to do it, it's like you walk into the vent and you're just like on a boat. What do you guys call it?
Here you're going. Boom.
There's no music.
I was
It's
like
like,
wearable design, so like you like design like and most of these are like 5 weeks or
it's like the,
they're shorter. So you have like a lot in it.
you know, like you walk into it, it's like 5 different rooms. Each room is like a different event going on. And then
Some of them are
it's
full,
like
some of them are
breaking
like.
I was
Honestly, it depends on which
I
one
didn't
you're
really know a lot
in.
of
Some
people
of them, one of them's hosted by the engineers.
but I have some
But
more.
the cost is good with their
So you know the forest, the grove, the grove, the silent disco? So the grove at the silent disco, you could feel it through your feet because there were no speakers. But last year at the silent disco, there were like 10, 15-inch subwoofers.
More to that one.
you know,
So it's silent disco, but somehow on our order sheet from Lightning Audio, we ended up with extra subwoofers. And so we're in the build and we're like, yeah, these like, we don't have enough power to put them here. And so then we're like, put them in the grove. This is gonna be the loudest silent disco ever. So it was like no like
That
high
whole alcove,
frequency
like
things,
right about
like whatever group
It's
does.
a little
Because
alcove.
they give those songs so when everyone is dancing, like they're doing their own thing, but there's some like similar beat to the song. So they find like whatever that common denominator is, and they push that through the subwoofers at really low frequencies, so it can only go through your feet. But because of an excess order area for rental of subwoofers, we needed the loudest silent disco ever.
I believe it, and what's so funny is that I think I saw that Ordeal go down. I was people were just like really and just like two like looks like looking pretty self as they were turning off. And they were just like,
Did you have a clipboard that says, I don't know, I just work for
is he a bigger dude?
I was just I think they were just gone.
Oh, I don't know, but I remember asking, oh, can I go up to the stuff? And the person was like, the dude is going up. You know, yeah. He was just 9 feet long. Oh, that's sick. Maybe. It could just be like,
You just track a lot of data.
have you been Dance Fest? Dance Festopia or
Okay.
I've worked, I used to volunteer at Art Outside.
I get it.
There's an Apache Pass, rock deals, and
in the background. Well, they're just like the big flash.
I don't like those big flashy dogs.
It's not a big flash.
The secret is ticket transfers or layovers in Vegas so if you connect your Vegas, you can get $50
You know, actually that's so true, because I know it's tickets to Vegas always cheaper. Like, I mean, like everywhere else, and like, in fact, my house is on one of the, this is like the casinos.
I did electric work, and then I was working in Zion, so I went to Vegas and met my friend there, 3 hours of conversation.
That is,
Yeah.
I know.
And I went on that.
so why was it that she went?
So, in between, electric forest
Hey, no wonder
and
it's not.
Zion Yoga Festival, it paid for a 3-week plane trip living in the forest outside of Flagstaff. Boulder and climbed the pit and
Yeah, okay.
there's a bouldering area called philosophers. I forget what they call it, but there's one they have one called the Brain. It's 36 mile boulders.
Is that it? I just did, like, there's the river canyon in Sedona in Arizona. So Seattle's here, and then there's the Pacific.
So my friend is an adventure guide in Zion. He takes me
Right there.
There's this big climbing place where you have to get like a diet plan. There's like a wet stick and you gotta swim to 500 feet and you gotta come up with that time. You like dive and you come back to the and then you're in this like system and then you come back up. So smart. We didn't get to do it, but someday.
Now I'm like, I'm back with him. You can do it next time.
There's so much to do. So I've been to Vegas like life is beautiful. Without you. That's what Vegas is for. Life is beautiful.
Primavera Sound in Saget.
I don't know.
Oh, they're really fun, but they're like other places in Europe.
Never left.
If you ever do stay in hostels, staying at like hostels is $20 a night.
Oh, I love hostels. So my coworkers that picked me up my flight got in a day early, so I stayed in this hostel. I met people. They had like little like they had bikes that like if you stay in the hostel, and so I was biking around the university, and there was another hostel that we hadn't spoken yet. We were also renting, so we just kept like crossing directions, and then we ended up heading back to the hostel at the same time. We had a really great conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was a magical experience. I love hostels for sure.
Yeah, no, hostels. Before I got to like last day, a couple nights ago, hostels. Yeah, that was
Firehouse. My friend got a like for the first semester.
we just found
I want to explore with kids.
yeah, full time. I definitely had like a life before that I enjoyed.
I dropped out of college and joined the circus. Now I'm back.
Yeah, it's kind of
So you gotta do that.
Something like music I've been following this, like, it's an all-girl Stuff like that is really efficient.
I actually was working 47 minutes outside the city. So I would do north. Even
The opportunity.
Some people were already out there where I am in South City.
Live music.
Oh no, my dog's not. And I'm not saying anything. I'll tell like some babies. Then it's like quiet and rolling back. There you go. Okay. Every day. Yes. I briefly. That's a crazy combination. The food was amazing. I was in
Obviously, like the records.
that was
Which I just got a little bit.
Fix it in post. Oh, it's just like a film thing, right? So say like you miss a scene, or like you're filming something and like the mic comes through the camera, and they're like, oh my gosh, I took a full take to fix this scene. And they're like, don't worry, we'll fix it in post. Catering today.
That's a story. What do you think of the
Sorry, so being working in social media festivals is a little harder for me.
Yeah.
What are the minis or minis?
Yeah, so I think I've got rainfall, I guess.
Like mud trekking, like cross-terrain things instead of my normal work boots. It was hard, but we were there. Some things haven't changed. Like we had to climb up and redo some stuff. So they set like black sheeting, kind of targeted and stuff that hides the wires. We had to pull some of that down because it was because there was this show in Vegas like week before that was came through and the entire like tower so we had to go up and it was pretty, but it kept the whole state in our meeting. Then we had 3 stages up on so it takes a lot of planning. For the most part, things have to help shows. It was very cramped off stage. We had like the entire, instead of just we had to do everything right off stage. Very narrow roads, a lot of like real effort. It kept you we had to put little risers on some of the cable valves. Take down fall hazard,
Yeah, I want to
permanent, so like the site coordinator, he just does what's available. So you look at the money installed, so you look at whether, so usually they have the plan, they will cancel something. And there's a lot of fun. Was it a specific stage?
Oh, we were still in the camp. But we were like walking in. And I just saw her
designing the stage. So like there's lost lines this year. Do you remember the two big paradox stage? The big pterodactyl with the shaped lines on the front. Jeff's decision. It's like we put some flavor in it. It wasn't like and we called the fire marshal and he's like, and so then we climbed back up there and we sprayed the entire plywood scenic with like fireproof coating of the paint. And then we had the fire marshal come back out to prove it, and we sent pyro lines to shoot fire at the top of it. The fire marshal is actually the perfect. You have to be perfect. The fire marshal says no. 250,000 people. What about you? What brings you here?
Okay. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. We're going to get started. I'm just going to, before we introduce our guests, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about Texas Immersive Institute. So welcome to the Texas Immersive Salon. If you do not know me, I am Erin Riley. I'm a professor and the founding director of the Institute, so we're excited to have you here. Just for, if you're new, I'll tell you a little bit about Texas Immersive. So we are like a center or program across UT that serves both faculty, students, and real-world clients. One way that if you are a student and want to get involved, you can apply to join the next cohort. We are made up of all majors, both graduate and undergraduate, across the university. I see some of my explorers in here now. So from a wide variety, from like Moody College of Communication, the different majors, information school, computer science, College of Fine Arts, School of Nursing. We've had a wide architecture. We've had a wide variety of of students apply and get in the program. I accept 30 students a semester, to join the cohort, and they go through a series of electives that end up becoming an immersive experience that they showcase and are to the public in a ticketed environment. So that's our learn. We host, if you like, oh my gosh, all my electives are full, I don't have time to join a cohort, even though I think all my alumni in front here and my current students would say you totally want to do it. But if you don't have time, there are plenty of other ways to learn from Texas Immersive. We host workshops. So if you want to do a workshop in 3D printing, I think that just is coming up. Projection mapping, augmented reality with Eighth Wall. I think Chris will run that one for me one day again. So a lot of variety of emerging technology workshops available. We also have these signature events. So a Salon to bring in innovators in the immersive field. Also, our Explorer in Residence this year is being hosted as part of the President's Office Year of AI. So I'm bringing in 2 amazing explorers next month. One is Craig Allen, who was one of the founders of Disney Interactive. So you guys might want to come check him out. And Rachel Joy Victor, who is one of my past students, just so you know. But she is a consultant in media and entertainment. She does a lot around world building and strategy. And she is the co-founder of Fabric AI, which is a huge creative AI incubator in Los Angeles right now. So come and meet them in October. Let's see. What else can I tell you? We also work with real-world clients. So we have projects. A lot of the alumni get involved after they go through the program. They work on real-world projects. And faculty who are involved. I see a few faculty who are involved. Faculty explorers who actually work with the real-world clients on different projects. We conduct research. Right now, we have Sandbox Fridays from 12 to 5 at our immersive lab, where you can come and I think a few of us are working on haptics research and storytelling. We are doing, we have a fab lab, so we're doing a lot on thinking about 3D printing. I just pulled out my sewing machine because I'm into fashion tech right now. So that's kind of fun just for taking a break from the haptics. So if you have any questions, feel free to come see me afterwards. I'm happy to answer your questions. Go to immersive.moody.utexas.edu to actually learn more. Oh, I'll tell you one more thing. We just got a grant for the President's Global Award to do immersive projects in Japan. So if you are an undergraduate student and you want to come with me to Japan, June through mid-July, myself and Kate Frere, who is an academic explorer of TXI and over at College of Fine Arts, we will be bringing 12 to 15 students. So you need to put your team together and propose a immersive experience you want to do there around climate change. So take a look at that at the President's Global Award. I think that's it. I think that's enough of what we're doing lately. So I think I'll start, and let me just put this pause here. There we go. Okay. So if we're all set to go, if the demo's not working, we will get the demo working by the end, so that way you guys can try it out. But I want to introduce 2 incredible innovators. We've got the CEO and founder, James Chester, and Dr. Lisa Rogers, who's director of data of Gumband. So if you haven't heard of Gumband, I was introduced to Gumband from one of my friends who's in the industry, Melissa Eccles. She was like, you got to take a look at this. I'm like, oh my God, let me look at it. Well, it is so cool. It's a SaaS platform for experiences. So think analytics meets physical spaces. So if you're in media and analytics, you know we do a lot around digital, right? A lot around like different metrics. But people always ask me as an experience designer, how do you know if it works, right? How do you know if the physical environment works? And I feel like Gumband has like hit it out of the park. So why don't you guys put your hands together and give a big, warm Longhorn welcome.
Is it on? It's on. That's great.
Thank you. Okay. I think we're good. We'll click through here. How's everyone doing? Thanks so much, Aaron. That was a really nice intro. Wow. I'm James. I'm the CEO of Gumband, as Aaron said, and yeah, welcome to our night. We want to tell you a little bit more about past the intro. We are a SaaS platform built for experiences, and so we're fortunate enough to be on Fast Company's Next Big Things in Tech list right now. So we are an award-winning software and hardware company that is really defining the future of what we think experiential means. And so we work in all kinds of different environments and activations, and we'll talk about that. You will not be quizzed on any of this. These are some of the people that are a part of the Gumband team, some of our leaders. You'll see me up front there, and then Lisa all the way to the right. We're super fortunate to have her on our team. She has a really, really deep background in mathematical modeling, and she's helping us to apply a really solid framework of data and insights to the physical world, and she'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we have some others on the team that have expertise in world building, in physical and digital experiences, full stack devs, hardware design, all kinds of stuff. And the way that we started was we really spun out of this experiential studio called Deep Local, and so they're based in Pittsburgh. And their expertise is designing and launching and building immersive experiences. And so they've done that for, you name it over the years, Google, Nike, Netflix, TikTok, Spotify, you name it, they've done that. And it's been through retail, it's been office campuses, it's been at CES, Comic-Con, just whatever you can think of. And so our team kind of started in Deep Local, and we realized there's really no common way, and there's really no solid framework for managing and measuring these experiences for clients. And so a lot of times these experiences are built using custom and bespoke technology, or maybe some third-party systems, physical and digital all together. And there's no way of really controlling that from the cloud. It's not often very stable. It's kind of built for a specific application, and then don't look at it the wrong way or it won't work, right? And so, and certainly none of it is measurable. And so we kind of came up with the idea, well, what if we built a tech shell that was very flexible and allowed ourselves as experienced developers, and then also our clients, to access a very consistent, beautiful user experience of a UI to control, manage, and then more importantly, measure these experiences. Doesn't matter how big, how complex, where the experience is, how many of them there are. Gumband wraps right around it. And the reason it's called Gumband is that that's actually a term for rubber band in Pittsburgh. So it's kind of a local term. So that's kind of where the name came from. And today we're fortunate enough to be powering experiences for some of the largest brands in the world. And so we're really fortunate to have kind of an early client list like that. And we really think that we make experiences better. So what we tell our clients is that Gumband makes it turns your physical activations and your spaces into fully manageable and measurable marketing assets. And so if you imagine, I think Aaron said it best, you would never launch a website without a back end to log into and to manage it. And that's really the principle of Gumband, is that we're doing that for the physical world. So as more and more technology get pushed into the physical world, and as as more of that is complex, it has lights, it has screens, it has electromechanicals, all that can be kind of brought underneath Gumband's Gumband UI. And so if you think about the way that we fit, it's like you have sort of experiences, which are these like short-term live events, a 3-day festival, CES, a conference, a fan experience at a stadium that's kind of per game. And then you have these spaces that are all permanent. So if you think about a retail store, if you think about a building lobby, or maybe an office campus, or maybe an experience center where you might go and learn about a product or a brand as a customer, or maybe an executive, those are more permanent spaces. Gumband fits underneath of both of those, and so that's kind of how we ladder up. And so we all know experiences can be super engaging, super memorable, really impactful, unforgettable. And the research shows, as many of you probably know, that we live in an experience economy. And so online experiences on websites or on our phones, they're so ubiquitous that they don't have the same kind of impact as when we're brought together and we're experiencing things in real life. And so that's the idea of a great experience can kind of leave you, with a memory, with kind of for a brand, it kind of raises your affinity for the brand. But then they can also be really static, unreliable, unmeasured. And we are demonstrating that tonight because our experience needs to be restarted. So Lisa's working on that, fortunately for us. But that's the idea, right? Is like this stuff it's tricky. It's tough to launch these things. You're often combining, chipsets and code and third-party systems or bespoke, custom things. And so putting them all together is really tricky. And so the idea for Gumband is that it allows you, again, to kind of remotely manage that. Lisa's has been in communication with our remote team right now that's helping us troubleshoot that, and that's kind of how it goes, right? So the idea is that we're bringing brands to life in the physical, and so we're kind of helping that effort. These immersive studios, and there are many of them, are doing this in several different ways, and Gumband is just allowing those to be elevated. And so we think that tells a really powerful story, and we think that it helps the brand to spread joy, and so that's kind of the business that we're in. And then I'm gonna pass it to Lisa. Did you want this, or do you want to hold?
I'm fine.
All right.
I'm just gonna shift my computer.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm just gonna do one last check to see if
Sounds good.
Unreal actually started.
Look at how authentic this presentation is, right? We should have planned this. Maybe we did. I don't know. I didn't. But we kind of struck gold hiring Lisa onto our team. She has a PhD in applied mathematics and a very deep expertise in modeling human attention. And so she's bringing a really advanced framework of data to our product. So I will give you this microphone now.
Hello. I don't really think I don't. Oh wait, we use this. We need it for the live streaming. I'm sorry. I was going to say I am a relatively loud person, so I don't necessarily always need something like this. Okay. So I was going to talk you guys through. And yes, hello. James gave me the introduction. Sorry, I'm being a little hasty here, just because I've been doing some troubleshooting back and forth. If you work with like Unreal Engine or hardware bits or anything, you probably know all the fun about that. I can talk more about that later. But first, what I was going to tell you about was the prototyping and playtesting sort of things that happen in a creative tech agency. This is, Gumband is a software platform that sprang from a creative tech agency, as James said, out of the need to kind of like unify all of these different electromechanical elements. And so we just had this kind of fun slide here of some examples of different types of prototyping. So like the first thing that you see here is the Google Flowers that Deep Local and Gumband worked on. The prototyping for this takes many stages. You have like the brainstorming of the basic concepting with like paper flowers opening, and then from there you start putting together the electromechanical pieces, and then we end up with this beautiful display of flowers that open and follow people as they move around. It's really cool. If you get to one of the Google offices to see it, you should definitely see it. Second is, just a person turning a light off and on, which doesn't look super exciting, but it's really all about testing electromechanical interfaces and tools, and those can be as simple as turning a light on and off, though even better would be an LED that actually, changes and shifts colors. I've got an example of like a 3D volumetric projection. That book that you see is actually something that we're working on for a large client as well, and it works by projecting onto a book, and different content is cued whenever you flip the pages of the book. Gumband monitors and measures all of that stuff. We've got some examples with like computer vision testing, and then some creating and testing of an iOS piano player interface, which was pretty cool. So, Gumband in action. All right, so the first thing that we have to talk about here is now we're focusing a little bit more about Gumband. I gave you kind of like an example of creative tech before, but Gumband itself is built for experiences. So what I mean by that is that each of the dashboards that we have a UI that runs through a web interface, and each of the UIs can be as custom as any of the environments that we actually control. We're built on 3 different modules for technological control. We have the measurement module, the content update module, and the health and management module. It depends on the client that we talk to. Sometimes people need 1 or 2 of these things. Sometimes people want the whole package. We offer them in modular chunks, so that we can be as customized to your technology as you can possibly want. We have, in terms of like the content updates and health and management, Gumband constantly actively monitors various exhibit components behind the scenes. It identifies when something needs attention. You can remote restart things. You can remote troubleshoot things. All of the exhibits can be configured with different real-time signals, depending on the type of experience and the different components. We have all sorts of third-party integrations. And then all of the electrical mechanical signals that you have are then grouped into the UI so that you can see everything at once. And then for operator management, it makes things super easy. We'll give you an example of the UI and stuff later, but we're gonna tell you a little bit more about how it works, right? And then one of the things so I work on a lot of different parts because I'm the director of data, so I have to deal with the data pipelines and the architecture, but also the analytics for everything. And the majority of the analytics that I work with are on the presence sensor side, but this all feeds into the measurement portion of our package, which is really like my real specialty. And it basically gives like a parallel for digital marketing metrics. So anything that you might see through web services, we try to give very similar metrics for engagement and for activity that you would have in web services. And that is why we like to use the tagline, the Google Analytics for the real world. Oh, that's not the right one. I've got 2 computers open. This is my life. Okay, so how we actually like integrate throughout different things. So how do we actually work? We let our teams, any team that we work with, connect experiences, no matter how custom, to one platform that you can take care of measurement, control, and monitoring features, the things that we talked about before. So this kind of depicts the cloud services and UI and all the different integrations that we can have. We have interactive installations with custom code backend, working with various custom-built hardware. We have CSAT kiosks and tablets that can measure sentiment shift and gauge brand affinity that we use when we look at the significance of passive interactions that we get from the presence sensor. The presence sensor is the main thing, one of the main things that I work on. There's an example of that. This little depiction is actually showing how the presence sensor surfaces people. I'll explain in a minute how the presence sensor actually works, but the presence sensor allows us to completely understand space usage and how guests dwell and flow into and out of spaces, how they engage with focal points. We can control things with digital signage, or we can integrate digital signage where we can do content updates, we can do remote updates, have custom CMS connections, and we incorporate our Gumband hardware. We can also work with trackable QRs. So if we have scanning of QR codes, we can count like the conversion from physical to digital properties. And then of course the environmental controls that I was talking about before, the third-party management system where you can actually turn lights on and off, you can reboot things, you can do really anything that you could control within any sort of interactive environment. So we have several different pieces of proprietary software and hardware. We have the web application and the microservices, which is completely secure, completely cloud-based, all a web application, very easy to use. You can click through and view all of the different interactions and impressions, statuses, controls, whether things are on and off. We can look at control logs, which is what I was doing before, which is super fun. We then also have the SDK, the software development kit, and the REST API that we have developed. And so if you are on the developer side of using Gumband, you can actually just use like very little development effort, and you can integrate like our Node.js SDK, and then make sure that your communication between the exhibit and the hardware is working properly. We also have our user-friendly microcontroller, our Gumband chip, that has a dual-core ARM processor. It's very easy to integrate, and then we can, monitor, control, and measure things. And then finally, the cameraless, excuse me, I feel like I'm breathing very heavily into this. I don't mean to be doing that. I'll try to do it like I'm singing. The presence sensor. And the presence sensor is our own proprietary piece of hardware. It's PII free, so it's no personal information. There's no camera attached to it. We can observe and evaluate the level of activity in spaces while keeping guests' personal information personal. Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit more about the presence sensor. This is what it looks like. It looks pretty Apple-y. We're pleased with that. They're, like I said, PII free. So how they operate is 60 gigahertz millimeter wave technology, and it tracks passive engagement. If you guys don't know what millimeter wave technology is used for, so it's radar, millimeter wave radar. It operates on finer wave spectrums than other forms of radar. It detects all sorts of micro movements. The most common place that you will see it is in your Apple Watch or any other sort of thing that has a pulse oximeter in it, because essentially what the millimeter wave radar does in a pulse oximeter is that it sends chirps in the form of light waves through your blood vessels to see how your blood moves through your veins, and that's how it measures your pulse. And so we do this on a much larger scale. We're not looking at blood, we're looking at people. But it can do that too. It can do lots of things. It's cool how much radar can do. Okay, so that brings us a little bit to our deep dive here, our toolbox. I'm going to do like one look at it and see if things have connected. Not right now. We'll move past that right now. So this is the digital toolbox that was built by Deep Local, which is the company that we sprang from. They have a fabrication shop in Pittsburgh. That's what they operate out of. And so initially, the Deep Dive Toolbox was supposed to be a demonstration of all of the different cool things that Deep Local and Gumband do, how Gumband integrates on the back end, and then also a way of looking through the Gumband web UI and seeing how interactions, different spawning of content, how that actually shows up in our metrics charts. And then I believe this guy was on loop before, but in case you guys didn't see it before, this is kind of the scroll through of what happens in Deep Dive when you pull the levers, when you twist the knob, when you push the buttons and get more content. Gumband measures and records each of those button presses, those knob twists, those spawning of digital content. What I am going to do, because you've already seen this on loop, I am going to click forward here a little bit to where it actually shows more of the Gumband stuff. So we have partnering with Gumband. We've got a little screen here that gives you more information. You scroll to the Gumband room, and then within the Gumband room, you can select to try out the presence sensor, which is mapped there above the toolbox. So it's kind of like, you know, an infinity mirror of toolboxes, if you think about it. And what you're seeing in this space is someone moving into the space, the presence sensor actually registers their activity, and then someone interacts with the toolbox, and then they get an interaction, a +1 interaction for doing that. And then you can scroll through and see a little bit more information about how the presence sensor works and everything. Okay, so now getting into the nitty-gritty of this stuff here, and I'm also just kind of looking at time. How are we doing on time? Good? Sweet, okay. Then I can keep talking. So our big thing here is in terms of disrupting the marketing industry, we're building novel metrics for physical marketing, specifically looking at ROE, return on engagement. So probably what a lot of people here are familiar with is ROI, return on investment. What a lot of brands are looking for now in physical marketing is return on engagement, and seeing exactly how customers engage with touch points, engage with staff, just engage with the brand in general, and how that makes clients feel towards a particular brand and how that makes them come back to this brand. So basically our suite of, not like, you know, sweet, but, you know, the things that are offered, the suite of metrics that we are offering for measuring physical return on engagement. As you can see, I'm going to use that Google Analytics for the real world again, because this is kind of what these metrics are modeled after. But we can look at number of visitors. We can look at passersby going by a booth, a focal point, whatever you'd like to think of. You have interactions, which are active engagement. You have passive engagement, which is all of the stuff that's surfaced by the presence sensor. Like I said, active engagement is like interaction with touch points and everything. When we aggregate all of these signals with things like CSATs, social listening, things that actually do proper sentiment analysis, not AI. Don't go to AI for sentiment analysis. Does not work. You need to know about neural networks to know exactly how it works. But we can talk about that more later if you want. And really this allows for like a holistic view of everything and gives you a nice dashboard depending on what particular metrics that you want to look at. A lot of people are asking for things like heat mapping so they can see particular densities of areas and how people are dwelling in areas where people avoid certain spots, so you don't have to staff if you want to move things around. We can pretty much provide immediate feedback about the efficacy of any sort of activation space, so that you can basically inform more optimized spatial arrangements, staffing solutions, and branded content curation. So some of our special sauce here, like I gave you kind of a suite of generic metrics before, but we also have the metrics that I am developing myself and that I have developed. So the things that we have developed, one of the things that's not listed here is the occupancy snapshot, which is what all of these things are built off of, which is essentially, it's just population of people within a space, just occupancy snapshot. Makes a better sounding variable as far as I'm concerned. So it's basically the number of people in a space at a selected time. It lends itself to a nice heat map visualization. It just gives pure numbers so that you can see activity in a space. But from that activity snapshot, we calculate the activity score. And the activity score is a dimensionless index because technically if you're talking about the world of metrics and you want to be like a proper mathematician about metrics, metrics should be inherently insightful numbers that you can really like draw some sort of strong conclusion from just at a glance. Usually these things are dimensionless, so they don't have units of any sort. So activity score, I designed to be a dimensionless index done by some normalization, goes from 0 to 10, indicating level of activity generated in and around the exhibit. Like I said, it's built off of the occupancy snapshot using some mathematical magic. And really, you can get a very qualitative view of things. You can either look at things in terms of numbers, or you could look at like, this was not active at all versus medium active versus this was really active. It's the most active that it's been, which lends itself to very easy comparisons for when you have people who are controlling things who are not necessarily on the developer side of things, people who want these just kind of like straightforward insights. Then with the activity score, we also have another thing in development, which is the dwell to immersion rate. It's actually the dwell to immersion conversion rate, but couldn't put that all in one really nicely looking box or anything. But dwell to immersion conversion is essentially how does dwelling in a space and looking at focal points convert into customer engagement. And we run case studies and we run A/B testing in order to determine how dwelling in a focal area for particular periods of time with other sorts of interactions, how that leads to more brand engagement. And then altogether, when you take the activity score and you take the dwell to immersion rate, you do a linear combination of them, you will get an overall activation grade, so like the health of your activation. And so that way, you get a straightforward number. If you know that you have a D for an activation, you really have to improve your activation space. It would be the same thing as getting grades in school. So everyone knows how to do that. Yes.
For questions, but I have a question.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
And since it's a salon, we're going to make it open like this.
Yeah.
So just really quick, on the dwell to immersive, have you actually compared across different immersive experiences so you can start making recommendations as to what like specific styles or designs create that conversion better?
So that's what we're working on. So what we're doing is running case studies, and we're trying to work kind of as an interactivity lab, essentially, to determine this stuff ourselves. I also draw a lot of research from basically how museums function and museum engagement models and how that converts to like effective learning. Yes.
The main For the main insight scores, what is the effective sampling rate? How often can those numbers be reaggregated or populated? Would that be like by the minute, the hour?
By the minute.
Activation?
I mean, really, I can do it by the millisecond if we really want to. So we can get to specifically real time.
Hi, I worked with a retail board in Chicago like 8 years ago. I can't remember what they were called, but it was all about heat maps at the time.
Yeah.
And it was about point of purchase placement for retail and like where to put everything based on heat mapping.
Yep.
It seems like it's come a long way. It's a really interesting technology. So Does this connect back to actual sales of physical goods as well, or is that just not?
Yep, we can connect with any sort of third-party software, which includes point-of-sale systems and anything like that. We can dump it into our database, and I correlate it.
Nice. And then the last question I had, this is great, is activation versus interaction versus interaction versus engagement. Can you explain that? Thanks.
So I think you mean activity versus interaction versus, so activity would be basically how many people are occupying spaces within a grid, essentially. So activity is people who are either dwelling in I'm sorry, I keep saying grid space because I work with the presence sensor so much. It projects a 6 by 6 meter grid. That's the space that it can cover. So 36 meters squared, and we look at XY positions within the grid.
That's one presence sensor that does that.
Yeah, that's one presence sensor that does that. And so the activity score is based on people standing in one place, but also people walking by, and there are different weights for those things. Activity, what was the next one? Interaction. Okay, so interaction, like I said, we have both passive and active interaction. Passive interaction is all the stuff that's surfaced from the presence sensor. So that dwell, passing by, activity score, that's all passive interaction. Active interaction is fiddling with those doohickeys. And then engagement is essentially so there's passive and active engagement as well. Passive engagement would be, okay, we have a focal point here where we're reading something. You stay and you dwell in that area, and you're not doing something like looking at your cell phone. And then active engagement would be interacting with active touch points. All make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, I think it's time to toss it back to James to talk about some case studies. Don't worry, I'll be back. I have case studies to talk about too. James.
I'm so glad. So does this make sense? Amazing. Yeah, we built basically like a two-sided open tech framework product where developers are on the back end, they can hook anything to this that they want. And what results on the front end is a beautiful user experience for non-technical operators, right? So it's imagine the internet before WordPress. It kind of sucked to launch a website, and we had no measurement before Google. I mean, you had measurement, but Google Analytics made it stupidly easy to measure and engagement. And we've used that frame on a lot of this measurement, as Lisa said. I worked in paid media analytics for a long time, and it's you can look at every signal possible and every form of engagement online. And so it's well, let's make the physical world that easy to track. And so that's effectively what we've done. Our clients have come to us for a lot of different types of use cases. We've just we've kind of laid a few of them out here. The first one is a really interesting project. TikTok came to us, and they have a series of experience centers across the world. And the goal of these experience centers is to showcase their technology and build trust with their corporate partners on their platform. And so the idea is they've built a lot of these immersive experiences in these spaces around the world. And you can go and learn more about, let's say, advertiser, let's call it the NBA comes in. And TikTok's purpose is hey, NBA, come check out how safe and secure our platform is. Come check out how impactful creators that create content around the NBA is to our platform. And let's build a partnership that revolves around that, right? And so they have they have a number of sort of stations throughout these experience centers, and all the content is changeable. Gumband's managing all that on the back end. There's obviously engagement and touch points that are being tracked. One of the experiences is they can these sort of giant screens right here. You can imagine them as like gigantic cell phones, and you can actually swipe on this thing, and it swipes through creators, and it's called the Creator Showcase. And you can dial up any playlist of creator videos. You can change the ticker at the top to showcase what topic you're kind of magnifying in that moment. Gumband controls all that on the back end. There's something else called the moderation workstation, where you can actually sit at a little kiosk, and you can actually learn how TikTok moderates their content. Super interesting. Gumband controls all that. There's a privacy and security hub that demonstrates kind of how private and secure all their data is. And then there's a code walkthrough that talks a little bit about their algorithm. And so Gumband's controlling all those experiences. And not only that, Gumband is tracking all the interactions that inform kind of content creation and content planning in the future. TikTok can understand, what is being interacted with the most at what times. They kind of have these guided tours that go through, and they can understand more about how guests are engaging with the content that they've prepared. So that's kind of the TikTok case. But what's cool about it again is, there's 4 of these around the world right now, and so I could pop it on my phone right now and like check all those exhibits that are live. I could restart elements, I could load in new content, and that's what the TikTok team is doing. And I can also see how people are engaging. This is kind of a corporate office space example for Google in DC. We again, Deep Local built this really interesting experience that talks a lot about Google's like different features of Google and what they've launched, and the thing that we developed for Google in this case, and actually supporting a lot of their campus spaces around the world, is like they came to us and they said, well, how do we define like what makes an experience good, right? That was kind of the head of their real estate and workplace team. And so Lisa led a lot of this, as well as our CTO, and we said, okay, well, let's look at research around the museum space and others, and let's segment and categorize and build a framework and a classification taxonomy for all different types of interactions. And so we can think about space type, engagement type, signal type, touch point, and let's systematize it and make it so that it's reproducible across any type of interaction globally for Google. So we've done that now, and it's applied to this. The pictures of their lobby in DC, but I believe this slide is actually about kind of the general framework that we built for them. And so Gumband's running that for several locations, and it's kind of growing by the quarter for them right now. Google is kind of, as a company, they kind of have led the way with a lot of experiential activations. They're a very playful brand. They want you to be immersed. And so any of their offices that you've ever been in or walk in, it's like a sort of vaguely amusement park-esque, if a corporation were to do that. And then the Stream conference, I'm going to pass it back to Lisa in a second here, but we are currently funded by WPP, which is a holding company for ad agencies. And they have a couple of these conferences a year. They call it the Unconference, and the idea is that it's sort of, it's a little bit unstructured. And so they came to us and asked if we could use our presence sensors to track the popularity and kind of attendance and engagement on their breakout sessions. They have a bunch of tents, and people actually go up to a whiteboard and they scribble what talk they want to give, or maybe they want to attend. And so it's very unstructured, emphasis on unstructured. And Lisa, I will pass it to you, but we collected a ton of data, or as Lisa would say, data, and she's probably more correct than I am, so probably say data. And I will give it to you to talk about that.
It's data or data, actually. So, sorry, James. So like James said, so the Stream conference was probably like in the realm of your worst nightmare to set any sort of hardware up on. It was a rough project. They gave us no information. We figured we planned for it 4 weeks ahead of time. We got everything running. We got the databases up. We troubleshot it with 2 people on the ground, myself and my friend Alex, who I was talking to before, my troubleshooting partner. We set presence sensors up at these various discussion tents. Like James said, it's this completely unstructured event, and really what we were trying to do with this was to look at and try to uncover the structure hidden like between these spontaneous moments within streams. So people would write all of their talks up on a whiteboard day of, and so essentially we utilized, we took a record of what those talks were so that we could later correlate them with the data. We put presence sensors up at 4 different discussion tents where people would come and give their talks. And then we set it up in the tech lab where they had a whole bunch of different companies displaying things. And so we were able to get a whole bunch of data, troubleshoot things, deal with like all sorts of obstructions being in the way, because when you have anything that's run by radar, you have to worry about things obstructing your view and popping up as motion that isn't human motion. So you have to be able to get rid of outliers in that sort of situation. And we essentially came up with a report for them. We analyzed and visualized all the data, and we built up a whole bunch of insights into what tents attracted the most people and how they could change their setup for future stream events in order to make it more efficient. We revealed the most popular talk topics, which were obviously neuroscience, the most well-attended talk times. I didn't put those up there, but as well as the model of flow into and out of discussion tents. My background is in mathematical modeling, so this is the stuff that I specialize in, and we saw this really interesting periodic ebb and flow of stuff into and around discussion tents, and we got a ton of really excellent data despite having really horrible conditions to set. Oh, it was all outside too, so we had to install tripods and take the sensors down at the end every day, and I had to mark all of the spots to try to put them up. As a scientist, it just made me cringe. But hey, we came up with a great report after it, and it's very useful for WPP's future planning of conferences. And that's it. Thank you. Oh yeah, and James, we've got James's contact information, founder and CEO, my information, and then Kendra, our lovely director of marketing back there. And we have stickers and business cards, and we will answer all of your questions.
Anyone have any questions? I'll bring the mic to you.
Thank you guys very much for the talk. It was very interesting. So I was very much more interested in, like, I see a lot of numbers and a lot of quantitative data, but like, for example, I come from a business background and I know nothing, like most of the stuff you were talking about, I was completely lost. So how would you bring that platform to bring me insights instead of just the numbers? So for example, if I make an activation in a certain place, what makes that activation great?
Yeah.
What made it have so many engagements, and what is the stuff that is not working,
That's not what? Sorry?
What are the stuffs
that's not working,
that is
like
not working,
where things are not working. Well, essentially, so we have several different ways, we have several different tiers of Gumband offerings, because there are a variety of different partners that we have. We have like channel partnerships, we have events and like live events and experiences. There are retail spaces, there are trade shows. This sort of stuff really depends on the operator and who is going to be interested in seeing this information, because sometimes there are people who are a little bit like more technically and dev proficient, and then there's also like the business side of things. Not saying that business people can't be devs too. I'm sorry, that might have been horribly offensive to some people. But really, when we're looking at that stuff, this is why we, instead of saying like, oh, look here, there's this many people in this space, right? That's why looking at something like an activity score is much more logical, because once you start comparing across exhibits over long periods of time, WPP Stream is not the greatest example. It was 3 days long. It's kind of like a pop-up activation, but there aren't any touch points. There's nothing there, we were like down by the ocean in these little throw up tents where people gave random discussions that they hadn't planned, very hard to measure anything. And so when you get into a situation where you have a lot more things that you can, if we're talking about a trade show, they have a very specific setup that they use every year. So if you're looking at, okay, in this particular area at this booth, we had low activity and it has a setup in this area, it's like, well, we now see via our heat map that the more activity was happening in another area. So if there's something that we want to have more visibility with, we want to move it to that area. So that's how something like using a true metric like the activity score can be useful more towards the business side of things rather than just the pure numbers. Because I could also throw up a whole bunch of like statistics here and show like, the standard deviation, the average frequency of various types of interactions. These are all things I have plans for, having the mathematician's view of Gumband. But really, we can, no matter what side of the operating portion you are on, we can come up with things tailored to help explain to whoever is operating, essentially.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I can add to that, Lisa, a lot of times with conferences, brands are getting, brands will deploy a team and they'll spend a lot of money on a booth and a moment or graphics or whatever, giveaways, and they'll come back and the only data they have are CRM entries because they scan people's badges, and we gave away 4,000 hats. That's all they have. That's the only data they have. And so Gumband provides a ton of fidelity around that. If they have a 90-second talk track or a user experience that they've planned that should take 60 seconds and everybody's only spending 20 seconds in the booth, that's really insightful for them.
You know that you have to change up. It's like people are only engaging with this for 20 seconds. That other 40 seconds of material is not an effective method of creating positive brand sentiment.
And there's brands that have, we're talking to several brands that have hundreds of events a year. They're spending millions of dollars on these moments, and they really don't have a good set of eyes on what happened. And so that's just conferences and trade shows. You think about retail spaces, it is ultimately at the end of the day about, sales lift, but they don't have a lot of touch points to analyze that in a cohesive way and then at a portfolio level. I mean, they have sales data and sometimes they'll have beacon data, things like that, but Gumband's going to give them a lot more information around that and tell a much more complete story of what's going on. And so that's kind of the idea for that. But to your point about being a business person, what we did with Google and what we're doing with others is we're sitting down before any of these engagements happen. We don't want to just throw a bunch of data at them. The physical world is much more complex than the digital world. And so what's really important about these types of engagements is that we sit down in the front end and we actually define what's important to them.
Yeah.
And we classify what types of moments they, what is an engagement to them? What's a journey, what's a conversion, right? Is a conversion that they push this button or they interact with this moment? Is a conversion that they take a giveaway? A lot of that matters. And so defining a measurement framework that fits their goals is so important up front.
Yeah, and any time we do, it's like most of the times we have new client meetings to give you like an idea. It's like it's James, it's myself, it's our producer, and it's like our CTO. And so that way we're able to essentially come up with a list of notes for the asks, determine, we have like a preset list of questions to ask, you know, very pointed details about what they want to get out of the activation and everything, and then we come up with a proposal for the project that gets revised over and over again, and then the budget goes back and forth and everything. It's a really fun process, guys. But yeah, it's, you know, we work heavily, there's a heavy research portion to this, research and planning. Yes.
Sorry, I was inevitably late.
That's fine.
Yeah, I would like to know, you talked about return on engagement and physical marketing. There's one aspect I was particularly interested about where you referred to sentiment analysis.
Yes.
I'd like to know what you do better than AI with respect to that and how it goes into your measurement of return on engagement.
Everything. So AI sucks at sentiment analysis. So guys, here's a person who's actually built neural networks before, just telling you, you can't determine someone's sentiment from whether they've smiled or not. There are plenty of people who are in pain while they are smiling at things. There are plenty of people who lie while they smile. There's all sorts of neurodiverse people who make and other sorts of people who make a variety of faces. Using computer vision to analyze someone's face is a very one-dimensional way of doing sentiment analysis. And if you want someone's sentiment, you ask them a question. And that's where we need to step away from AI. Thank you. This concludes my TED Talk.
Yes. So I'm one of those wild professors that works full-time in industry, and I have 25 clients that I'm going to send a note to in the morning that says, please call these people.
Sweet.
What % of clients do you think are doing a good job with the data you provide? Categories like CPG that are notoriously behind the curve because retail doesn't allow them access to large data sets.
0.1%.
I mean, they're just...
Not very many yet.
Not very many yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not very many are utilizing any of the data that we have. This is why we pitch to all of these places and say, here's an easy way to maintain and view and analyze your data so that you can get all of the efficiency out of your activation that you can, that we're going to show you weren't getting before.
Yeah, we're also happy to do that analysis for them.
Yeah.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, it's important.
Well, looking at carrying it from the physical event, aligning data with other data sets to eventually get through to business outcomes and fuel multi-touch attribution models, if that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Are they doing that well? Are they raising their hand to say, we don't know how to do this?
They're raising their hand, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make it really, really easy for them to get value out of this, because that benefits everybody. Like, you know, we really care about bringing this to market because it's going to make, ultimately, it's going to improve experiences for everybody. And we really do believe that, I mean, like I said, I spent a decade in paid media, and I think the physical world is much more interesting, you know? So I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I think that it's incumbent upon us to make it, to kind of white glove it, you know, for a while the world kind of wakes up to this possibility, and we're happy to analyze the data and develop insights in partnership with clients. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. Oh, it doesn't matter. I know, I pointed in that general direction.
Yeah, it's close enough. What's the interaction between the product manufacturer and potentially the retailer, right? Because you're talking about CPG, so if you're in a supermarket, you've got some form of HEB and then you've got some form of General Foods too, right? Those are two different pieces of the equation you have to deal with. So
yeah.
Is the hard part dealing with I would think maybe who's easier, the brands themselves or I imagine the actual physical space is probably harder to negotiate with because they've got all sorts of concerns about maintaining the equipment and what happens if it gets broken or some kids.
Well, I mean, I think that also heavily depends on like whether the brand owns the physical space as well, because there's all sorts of a lot of brands are just leasing spaces and stuff like that. Let's see, what's harder to deal with? The brand. Yeah, definitely the brand, because most of the time people who run the physical spaces at least have a general idea of how hardware and software works. The brand usually doesn't.
I mean, even just conferences have been using beacons for
Right.
Yeah, they're very bad. Yeah.
Very,
Yeah. And you have a question?
So the system can measure density over time. Is it, in its current level, capable of measuring kinetic energy within a crowd? So say you can measure like so many people lingered at a position for so long, but if you had a grid of them, say, covering an entire off stage for a concert, can you measure like how hard are the people dancing in the crowd?
We can. So actually, this is actually a really good question. The amount of data that is actually attached to the metadata for the tracking algorithm for the presence sensor, if you really want to get into like the nitty gritty of this, it has all sorts of crazy capabilities. So like you can look at like the initial like position vector, so you can start tracing paths. You can get initial velocity. You can get individual velocity of people. With the tracking algorithm, when you actually start using clustering and looking at crowds and everything, once you have single person velocity, then you can start looking at crowd dynamics and crowd velocity and stuff. This is not something that has actually like come up as most people like want it yet. However, I want it, so it's going to be implemented.
So it seems like right now you'll have to make custom solutions for every single client. Like they'll have very different requirements and like KPIs they want to meet. Do you think there will ever be just like a product that y'all make where, you can buy it online and then set it up yourself?
That is the goal.
It would be cool to just set one up yourself and have it to track all the data.
So yeah, we're moving in that direction. We have a lot of the clients that we have had to work for, this is how the software industry works, is you have people like Google and other places that have tons and tons of money being like, we want this, this, and this. We want it done now. Sometimes your small software team has to work on making bespoke charts for things. So you spend a lot of time doing that. And then you eventually get to work on taking those bespoke charts and generalizing them and creating like a taxonomy around them. And so actually right now what we're doing is creating like chart templates, essentially, so that it's not necessarily a bespoke experience. You basically have like, okay, are you in events and experiences? Are you in retail? And we have developed like an entire taxonomy around all of this. Yes, exactly. There's still going to be a need for like training. It's just that there are things like the presence sensor can be eventually taken to like a plug and play sort of a situation. The Gumband SDK there's always going to be like a little bit of like developer lead to it. But then on the operator side, as long as they can interact with the UI, which is it's button presses, it's very easy to learn how to use, you're pretty set. So this is all stuff that I'm working on with the team. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Microphone first.
I'll pass it to you after. Don't worry. Hi, Ekaterina. Thank you so much for coming. This is really fascinating. So I'm really curious. Do you have an example of an activation that you've done where you had to think through its integration into like a full funnel paid media campaign and how that looked and kind of how you went about that?
I mean, I can think of like case studies that we're developing. Proposals. Yeah, there are proposals. Which one should we think? Minute Maid? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, unnamed brand. I'm sorry. Forget that you heard that. I need my Men in Black thing that like blots everyone's memory. I don't know if you guys are all old enough to remember that. So we have several proposals with companies that might do stuff in grocery stores and in various convenience store locations. And we essentially have a plan designed with them. It's really an experimentation plan to do A/B testing and everything, pretty much what I developed. We have told them how to set up their media and everything. We tell them each of the parts to A/B test. It's like, okay, if you have a convenience store, if we put signage in the front of the store, if we have some guidance throughout the store, if you do things at end caps, like what does that result in terms of just point of sale data, and then how people dwell in front of certain coolers and pick up certain products and everything. And then there are like several other tiers to this. So like when you introduce social media monitoring, then what can that reveal? But for each of these things, you know, a scientific experiment, an A/B test of some sort has to be set up to actually like isolate the variables properly. So we have several of these proposals in the mix right now, which will then, it's just that a lot of these types of proposals, it's like you have a month-long pilot that you set things up in, then you have 3-month testing period where you have to gather data. You have, for the ones that we're proposing right now, we have like another 3-month testing period. So this is stuff that's going to go for like 6 months to a year before we have gathered enough data to come up with a comprehensive report. So that's like a preview of how it would work. Yes, someone back there has the microphone, then we'll come to you.
Hi,
Sorry.
okay, I have a couple questions. I think the first one's going to be a little bit simpler to answer, and that's about the CMS side of things in the software. Is that something that all clients have the opportunity to link maybe a CMS that they already use to your CMS? So basically they're just using, it's kind of like a UI over their CMS?
Yep.
Or they could use the CMS in totality?
Yep,
Okay.
you can use the CMS in totality. You can wrap it with something else. You know, we have the opportunities to do all of that. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool. The second question, we talked a little bit about the sentiment. Analyzing sentiment as well as activity and interaction and immersion. And I'm wondering if that's part of the analysis after an experience or after the fact, something that you all offer in terms of who's asking the questions?
Oh, like if we provide, like if we can provide like the results of a survey for. Like,
yeah, I guess I'm wondering if that's a piece
we
of
can
what you all
provide
offer.
we can provide the analysis from that. So we can show, like, we can either give you like the top level, which is like, this is where people engage, this is how their sentiment shifted. But we can also just give you a CSV of all of the data as well. We can do either.
Is that something that you talk with clients about before the engagement and immersion?
Yeah, about what they want, because that comes a lot as the proposal portion of it, because we have to figure out how we're going to price things. And, you know, things that involve consulting pricing is much different than just something that is an automatic dashboard or an automatic report. You know, outputting a CSV is like one press of a button, whereas doing the analytics is a lot more.
Yeah. If sentiment is involved in the analysis that you're providing, does it become let's say like a third pillar that becomes part of the activation score? or activity score at the end? Is that's a whole
so
new
it
metric?
wouldn't be a part of the activities score per se. So the sentiment factors into that dwell to immersion conversion. So it's relating, okay, how and where a person dwelled and how that correlated specifically with a brand sentiment. So that's what the dwell to immersion conversion is.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I think there is a question here.
Okay, I might have a couple too. I'm sure like sooner is better, but when is the best time to start incorporating this product into designing an immersive experience? Like say something's already built, it's like a lobby activation. Is that okay to bring it in later? Like once the, yeah, right. But like say the install's already done, it's been done for years. Is it still possible to bring it in, and like what's the lift to do that?
Oh, well, that completely depends on what system that you had controlling things before, because there are other, it depends on the industry that you're in. A lot of times museums have systems that they have like developed themselves, that they usually work into things that tend to be quite archaic. But in general, if they want to, for the most part, I lost my train of thought. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm also thinking about troubleshooting. What was the question again?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the lift to retrofit? That's right. Okay, yeah. So it's really dependent on like what the system is that they have integrated already, and I'm trying to think about like precise, like how I would define precise lift for that. But really, we can be integrated into any system, and honestly, things like museums are probably the harder ones to integrate with, but most other activations and everything are relatively easy.
And so say you already have like cameras or motion sensors, can you gather that data too, or you obviously probably still need the presence sensor, but...
Oh yeah, we could still use cameras.
Okay.
It's just that the majority, so it's like, yeah, if you have cameras integrated with the system, we can certainly take the data from that. I've got a database, we can dump a bunch of stuff into it, we could do some math.
Okay, awesome.
But one of the things that we have actually found with lots of clients is that they don't have cameras and they don't want cameras. So that's still an interesting question.
And then is there any like ongoing subscription or licensing cost?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Excellent questions. That's true. It's dependent on the type of activation.
Okay, one more over here.
Hey, so I after you guys were saying about how you found a way to track certain metrics on something that metrics weren't being tracked, I started thinking about like other things like billboards or like semi-permanent like advertisements. What's like the limit to where you guys see like building metrics? Like is the limit just these type of experiences at trade shows or museums? Or are you moving to something bigger, like a billboard? I don't know, not bigger but different.
I mean, we could. Gumband is very capable of monitoring. If it's a screen with content, we can control it, whether it is a billboard or a TV. Thinking about profitability and whether it makes sense to be integrated with those sorts of things, we would have to really look at that. We would have to consult with people. We have not had any billboard people consult with us yet, but that's interesting. Any other questions? Or is there a follow-up to that?
No, that was mainly it. Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions? One more, two more.
Just toss it. No.
I know.
Right? Okay, so I noticed earlier, not an unnamed brand. It said the NFL, like you were trusted by some big brands, and there was a mention, like I saw the NFL logo, and I was just really curious what that looked like, if y'all can disclose anything? Like, what did that...
Okay, James could talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't do the sports. I do the sports. What am I talking about? I don't do the sports.
Did you say you don't do the sports? Spoken like an athlete. That was a pilot project. It was actually during COVID, and it was when fans were not allowed in the stadium. Gumband powered essentially like a giant Microsoft Teams session between the players on the field and fans who were streaming. And so it enabled the experience enabled fans to interact directly with the team. So like it was, if someone had a touchdown, they like the athletes knew that there was an area on the end of the field where they could go and like, you know, acknowledge fans directly, and certain fans were able to actually like interact one-on-one with players in real time. And so Gumband ran. It was actually pretty interesting because Gumband ran like the pressure and the time expectations of broadcast media is pretty, you know, specific. But Gumband ran like mode switching where when players were actually playing, there wasn't like live people on a giant screen to distract them. It might show like relevant tweets, or it might show a static state. And what was cool about it is that traveled with, I believe it was Sunday Night Football at the time, and so Gumband enabled that was like torn down, you know, every Sunday and traveled, and Gumband enabled the experience to be reskinned for whatever team was playing that week, and mode switching at kind of broadcast rates. And I believe there was our CTO is actually like very specifically behind this experience, but he always says how like we sort of we programmed in like a double confirm of mode switching, because so that someone didn't accidentally like bump something and like, you know, like mess that up, just because there was such sensitivity around the real-time nature of it.
Okay. My question is regarding the origin story of Gumband with Deep Local and how you all operate now. Are you completely separate? Do you operate more as like, you know, sister companies?
I would say siblings. We started as kind of a hacker project inside Deep Local, and then received seed funding to hire the team and bring the product to market as its own product. And so now we're very much our own product company. We still share a space with them, which is really convenient, kind of in both directions, where they can hack and experiment with Gumband. We can also see a lot of prototyping and play testing come to life and actually test different features that we're developing as well. And it's very friendly between us. So we'll co-pitch things sometimes and all of that. But I mean, we're operating as an independent company now.
That's cool. Was the hack project, like, was it born of a need that you all were seeing internally, or you were hearing clients ask for this, or like where did it really come from?
Yeah, it was both. That's a great question. We would have clients from time to time ask us for CMS solutions, and at the same time, you know, our teams would wanted something that was a bit more reliable when they were off site. So as soon as they installed and left, they could TeamViewer in or whatever sometimes, but they wanted something that was a bit more robust and a bit more stable. And Gumband is just incredible because it allows you to configure statuses, controls, and settings. It's very, you know, it's very structured. The code is very lightweight. I'm not a developer by trade, but from what the teams tell me, it's very easy to implement. And like I said, it's very lightweight. So yeah, it just gives you that full configurability. Kind of realized we had like a product on our hands over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Okay, last one.
Sorry. Hello. I'm a designer here at UT. So my question was, you're talking about a lot of like tracking experiences in real life. Is it possible to track where users are engaging like in a VR type of setting, or like where they're interacting within like a game?
I would suspect yes. We can really track any digital or physical signal, and that's I envision in the future like kind of a what's that?
Mixed reality.
Yeah, Absolutely. Yeah, and we actually have tracked, we did this for Meta. There was an experience where we tracked title selection within a demo environment for Quest.
Great. Well, that brings us to almost our hour, and I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to kind of play with the demo if it's available, or maybe not.
No.
Maybe not. But Gumband will be around if you guys want to ask them any questions afterwards. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you. And if we were measuring this room, it's a full house. So I think we would have like a winning experience here today. So thank you, James. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Kendra. Appreciate it. Their cards are in the back. Do you want to share anything else?
Yeah, if anyone has to leave, again, we're going to be here for a while, but if you do have to leave, we have tote bags, stickers, and our cards out there as well. So definitely feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions outside of here as well. Thanks.
I think Moody needs Gumband. You know.
Thanks, everybody.